going on mute. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, beautiful, wonderful.
Yeah. Here, I got a nice view for you this morning. This is
Oh,
Marina Del
lovely.
Rey.
Okay, nice.
On a clear day, you can see the Hollywood sign over there somewhere.
Oh, really? How good. Yeah, I went over to LA for the first time a few months ago. I thought it was beautiful out there. I was like surprised. I'd heard sort of, people be like, "Oh, look, it's cool," or "It's not that great." Like a lot of positives and minuses. I loved it out there. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, it was your first time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Where are you based?
Right now I'm just outside of Philly, but usually I'm in London.
Okay, got it.
So, traveling, doing the US thing. Tom, how are you going, mate? How's the holiday?
Good. Yeah, I thought I'd just tune in because it looks like a really interesting one. So
Yeah,
surviving, though.
okay, brilliant. With the family. That's good. Well, look, I think people sort of filter in and out, Jennifer, but I'll just give you a quick what we do here is essentially this is sort of like a live podcast recording. And so we just allow a bit of an audience in here to ask questions when they want. They filter in and out. But the whole point of this is to have you sort of teach us a bit about, your expertise behind specifically learning and development, which I know you've been doing with for quite some time. And then we take this and we sort of cut it together and we'll shoot it to you before we publish anywhere. And then we sort of go live with a podcast version of it. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. I'd love to be here.
No worries. Yuri, hello again.
Hi, Yuri.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you.
Good to see you. So look, how about we kick off like this because most of the people are regulars here. Jennifer, how about we kick off just an intro? I know you've got an extensive sort of career within teaching and coaching and ed tech, and I'd love to hear more about that.
Wow. Well, let me start with today. I'm Jennifer Kushell. I'm the CEO and founder of an organization called EYP Ventures. And we have an online learning program called Exploring Your Potential that we put in schools to help kids figure out what they want to do and who they want to be in the world. And I came to this after literally 30 years of working on youth employment. And as a solo entrepreneur for many years, starting when I was 19, I think 13 years old, I started my first business. By the time I was 19, I was building global networks for young entrepreneurs. And then started writing books and speaking. And I haven't done a lot of like one-on-one coaching, but I was always trying to figure out how to scale. Because every time I would teach in a class or I would teach in an auditorium or I would go on television, the demand was so high that I kept thinking, how do we scale greater and greater programs for larger and larger audiences? And so growing up in franchising and licensing, I saw these, companies that fried things for a living that were growing thousands of units around the world. And I thought, why can't we do the same thing with education? So I built a series of different companies, but usually it was around bringing together leaders and entrepreneurs so that they could learn and grow together and find safe spaces to really explore all the things that they could be. And I wound up writing a few books, got to speak in 60 countries and travel 2 million miles around the world. And then we had the opportunity to teach how to build a life around this while you're still young. And I think so many of us spent so much time while we were young and even into our 20s and 30s trying to figure out how to do the things we wanted to do, that it feels like a real life mission for me today to make sure that we're arming people as young as they possibly can get access, usually like teens, 20s, with real training and in-depth opportunity to explore who they want to be in the world.
Brilliant. And so it sounds like, I mean, you're traveling around to sort of 60 plus countries. You're doing all these speaking tours. I really, I think that's an interesting aspect, which I think a lot of the people who are part of the community want to learn more about is how did you build that sort of, I guess, thought leadership aspect to what you do? Because you know, it is a big part. And from what I know, it takes a hell of a lot of time. So I think as well, you know, maybe we just start, how did you start building that thought leadership aspect? And then how do you split your time? Because to get everything done.
Yeah, that's a constant battle even today. But I'm just taking notes. So first and foremost, like how did I do the thought leadership? I really, once I discovered I had a voice and I had something to say that people were interested in, I started exploring more and more ways to get out there and to talk. That's for me started when I was in high school. You know, I started joining like leadership organizations and started building them because I didn't see them around me. I found entrepreneurship was a way I could build things that were my own ideas and bring them out to the world. I started doing speaking engagements when I was in high school, and I became student body president, and I would speak in front of 500 people every Friday. And even though that was about whatever it was about, it started to give me that confidence that I could stand in front of large audiences and share what I thought was important. And what I realized is it wasn't so much the content, but being able to own a space, to hold space, to bring energy, enthusiasm, to bring new ideas is really inspiring for people. So it really doesn't even matter what the content is, but if you can hold space for people in a way that's compelling, I found that was a very powerful thing to do. I went about my business, went on to college, and then realized that there was no support for entrepreneurs like me. I kept finding my own freedom in entrepreneurship. I joke that I spent the first half of my life trying to fit in and the second half trying to stand out and do my own thing. I'm sure a lot of people can appreciate that and relate to it. But yeah, when I was, I couldn't stand still in school. I could never stand still. That's why I could never really take a proper job, because I could never sit still in one space, doing what I'm told to do. I need to be creating and innovating and, you know, morphing and building off of energy. And so I started writing articles online, built an online network, and all of a sudden people started showing up. And by the time I was 19, I had a network with 10,000 young people in it. And that was in an early technology called bulletin board systems, if anyone remembers that in the 90s. But you know, the more I tried to build little networks of people, the more people would show up. And I found that, you know, I was able to tap into something that was really universal, this drive to see what we're all capable of, see what's possible. You know, and that could be in any field, it could be in any capacity. But when I spoke about these things, people would show up. And it's funny, like even being on this podcast right now, you know, seeing people pop up, this feels very resonant with my own life experience, that when I would show up and talk about the things that I love, the things that I was seeing, the way I was seeing the world, people would come and follow and listen. And I got to a place where years later, I started getting asked to write books. And even though I had no experience in that, you know, going from an article to a book is a significant thing. It takes 9 months just to put it together usually, and then another 9 months to bring it to life. And I wound up graduating college with my book on the shelf right next to the top professor in the college. And this was a major school. This was Boston University. And so I started realizing that I could, it almost became like a game to me to see where I could go and what I could do. And they offered to help me do some publicity. And all of a sudden I was on CNN and I was doing Fox News and I was in the Wall Street Journal, and the media was like, it was intoxicating to have people pay attention, because I had struggled so much growing up to get people to listen to my crazy ideas. And all of a sudden now people are showing up out of nowhere, listening and wanting to know more. And so, you know, speaking engagements were a natural next thing. I would speak in small groups with like, you know, 20, 30 people. And then I started getting asked to speak to a few hundred people, and then a few thousand people. And then if you have a book, that's a calling card. And then the book became a bestseller. And then the bestseller started, you know, giving me really high paid speaking engagements. But I did very small ones and very small fees in the beginning. And I didn't do the speaking just for the money. And I think you can see the difference between the people who do what they do for money versus who do it for love. And I'm still trying to balance that, trying to, you know, make you know, build more and more capital around everything I do, but I was able to get to a place where I was making like $15,000 US per speech. And that's a pretty decent living, even if you don't do anything else with your life. But I was getting to a place where I was speaking in schools, and kids would wait literally 2 to 4 hours to ask questions after I was done with an hour, hour and a half speech. And
Wow.
that really said a lot to me. You know, I mean, we get signals when we're building things about we're maybe onto something. And, you know, how many of us really listen to the signals? But if we do, and we start following them, and it starts unfolding more and more opportunity, it's really amazing where you can end up.
It's sensational. It's your sort of journey of, it sounds like you've tried, you know, especially with that building your voice about everything. You've been on the speaking tours, you've done the book, you've done all this. With that, something I'm interested in that is that, you know, for everybody in our community who is maybe starting with their first sort of building their first courses, or finally starting to share their knowledge for the first time, what would you recommend as sort of the highest impact thing for them to start doing to grow their voice or to build their audience?
I would say try to first and foremost, like, find spaces that feel comfortable, and pay a lot of attention to who listens to you, about who wants to know more, about what spaces feel good. I think a lot of us say, oh, we should be, you know, speaking to these audiences, or we should be in these places because that's what's big and that's what people recognize. But finding the places that feel comfortable for us, whether they're local, whether they're global. Sometimes I feel more comfortable, frankly, with global audiences than I do in my own backyard. And there's a joke, you know, you can't be famous in your own hometown. I go to El Salvador, and they like throw me on stage in front of 2,000 people, and then I'm on television trying to speak Spanish for a half an hour to an audience, you know. So it's I think finding the places where we feel best heard and seen is really important for us, not only in the beginning but all the way through. And I think, you know, as you start to build business around your ideas and get traction, and see where your real value is and what people are willing to pay for, you start to look for other avenues to make bigger and bigger impact. But also, I think we have to always be aligned with who we are and what is comfortable for us, because sometimes we find that we're more comfortable on Zoom than in person, or we want to be on radio and not on camera. You know, I think really paying attention to what format works for you, what audience works for you, what topics work for you, and find the best ways to package that and deliver it is so essential in the beginning, and frankly throughout our whole entire careers, because it keeps changing and we keep searching.
Yeah, my old man used to say that he's got a face for radio. I always thought that was very funny. But so and something that sort of stood out to me there is you keep bringing up this idea of creating a space, and we've talked a bit before on other episodes of this about, you know, how to create meaningful experiences. But I'm really interested for your take on, how do you create a space where, you know, not only where you feel heard and seen, but where each individual audience member feels heard and seen?
I love that question. I learned later that I'm an empath, and I feed off of energy of people. And I think those of us who crave being in front of audiences and talking about things, or find energy from that, we tend to be connected to people differently than others. I think I've learned, after being burnt out many times over many years, I've learned to really dive deep into wellness and taking care of myself. And part of that has meant understanding mindfulness and spirituality. And mindfulness, a lot of mindfulness is about creating space, and it's about creating space for yourself. But our business, the learning and development business, is about creating space for others. And so I think there's a really beautiful kind of interplay between those, how we're able to hold space for ourselves and how we're able to hold space for others. And our success in business is our ability to hold space and monetize it in creative ways, but also to do that sustainably. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about safe space And I think part of our success with our online learning now is, I mean, we've built a SaaS model business. And it's not an easy business to be in by any means, and it's horribly difficult to work in education as well, because everyone is, you know, it's very hard to break into education. Thomas knows that well. So I mean, building into scalable businesses means you have to step out of your comfort zone constantly and do things and build things that aren't natural to you. The more I build my online learning, the further away I get from my audience. And this is something I never thought would happen. I thought scalability, building a SaaS model business that I can put, I mean, we've had 50,000 students go through our program. That's a huge number, but and they've all seen me because I present, I'm the host of the program. But because of all the technology that has to be involved, because of the procurement, because of the evidence building, because of all the layers that have to get in the way of our teaching to those students now being in an online platform, it really, you know, it's exciting, the potential, but it also can be soul crushing, to be totally frank, that business building part. Because our ability to get support to do what we do doesn't anymore come directly from the students and from the audiences seeing the live nature of what we do, but we're so far removed that we have to go through layers and layers and layers of convincing people who never really experience the magic of what we deliver to buy and to sustain these programs. And that's one of the hardest things I've discovered out of elevating our programs to scale and to deliver programs. And my dream is not to work with 50 schools. I want to work with 2 million people around the world. I've already traveled to 60 countries. I've been 2 million miles around the world. So you would think I could build a platform that can grow and spread because that message is compelling. But the layers and layers and layers of business that have to go in between, or that are in between right now, have at times made it stifling.
Interesting. And that point you made about, I think that's really profound. The further you sort of develop your online learning, the further you get away from your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested with that specifically is, you know, at the moment, what have you learned or what are you doing to maintain that connection with your audience, or to maintain connection within your audience?
To be honest, I've really struggled with that. If I could do a better job of that right now, we would probably be even more successful. But the nature of startups, the nature of being a business is that you've got to continue to scale and build infrastructure. And my inability to build infrastructure to keep up with demand has actually been one of my biggest challenges as an entrepreneur.
Wow.
And I said that out loud.
Yeah. Fair enough.
This time.
No, of course. And you know, you mentioned earlier that with that you sort of work off of the changes in energy that you read from the market. And you know, if we think about the market, it ends up just being energy that's sort of changing, and people's energy and focus changes. How do you maintain your learning to be at the forefront of you know, what is known, or to be up to date with what's happening in the market? Do you have a process for that? Do you run live events to keep people updated? What's your playbook there?
Actually, I've been learning from the industry intensively for the past few years. There was we go through phases, I think, in our own development where we're heads down building things, and then we come up and we look around and we see what's happening and we see how we fit in. At least that's been my process. I have spent the last 4 or 5 years going intensively into our field. I go to the conferences, I go to the events, I fly places, I talk to the people, I go to the hallways, I go to the sessions, like I figure out who are all the speakers, I go talk to all the speakers, I make those connections, and I try to really cultivate human capital and relationships that are rich and meaningful. You know, how I got here is meeting Thomas. You know, we went deep at a big conference, and I'm here. You know, so I think for me, I've really heavily invested in reading and watching the market. I talk a lot to now the AI bots to ask them what's happening in these fields. When I get to with leaders, I'm now asking to summarize what they've done and help align their missions with our missions. That's been really valuable for me. But also, frankly, I haven't done a great job about sharing what I know and what I'm seeing. And I'm in a place right now where I'm trying to bridge that gap. But in order to bridge that gap, I've got to bring in investment now to fund other people and more capacity so I can go do what I do best. Because without that extra capacity, all this demand is coming and I can't respond to it. I don't have enough bandwidth myself. It's one thing for me to hold spaces with 30 people or 200 or be on television or be on a podcast. But to run a company with all the moving pieces, to serve tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people, you need capital. You need infrastructure. And not all of us who speak, who have content, are cut out for building that business. That's necessary, but we have to find ways to do it. So I'm constantly navigating, how do I stay in my sweet spot? How do I do the things that I'm best at without crushing my soul with the parts that I'm not good at? But it's a balance. And how I split my time, that's a great question. I try to time block, and I try to make sure that I show up to see the industry leaders. But frankly, I'm still frankly at the back of the room when 4,000 people are in a room and other people are on stage. And it's easier for me to get on stage at the United Nations in front of ambassadors than it is my own industry right now. And that's been a really humbling experience. So I'm kind of in this mode right now, and I'll tell you guys an inside secret. I'm kind of in this mode where I'm working on a tsunami strategy. And my idea is that I'm going to pull back from a lot of the grunt work that we're doing and a lot of the deep in the field kind of work. And we're going to retool and come back like a tsunami. And that's the way I'm looking at things now. So I'm trying to stay
interesting. Yeah. The tsunami strategy.
Tsunami strategy.
With that being said, one thing I've heard from a lot of, course creators or community builders is that being sort of a founder-centric model, so like a Jennifer-centric community and coaching program at the start is really great, but it becomes a massive disadvantage as you try to scale.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts about that, or how you avoid that?
I think you leverage yourself as long as you can, but over time, the nature of what your value is to the enterprise is going to change. And I think it's important for us to keep our egos in check, but not lose ourselves, because but I have to say, it's always a balance for me about how front and center I should be with the teaching versus bring other people in. And I don't represent all the people that we serve anymore. Now there are many more people. We've had opportunities to work all across Africa, work all across the Middle East. I can't be that front person necessarily. I can open the doors, I can hold space, but should I be that primary person anymore? Probably not. And so that's another thing that I think about when I talk about building capacity. It's enabling me to be in the places where I can add the most value and create the most connection and create those safe spaces, but also create sustainability for myself and the organization. And that means I have to think about other voices and other people who can now start to step in and have those conversations. And frankly, I'm starting to think again about how to bring back community into the mix, because we've built programs that are very one directional, but we all know that learning doesn't succeed when it's one directional. It's the conversations, it's the interactions, it's the engagement. So how we bring that back into online learning now in ways that are compelling, but also are safe and are secure is the next road, I think, that to be tackled. And I think when we can do that, that's when we're really gonna thrive.
Yeah, interesting. Taking it, sort of empowering the community to connect themselves and to to grow a louder voice across. With that, how do you go about, because you said you sort of mentioned that you were thinking about bringing some people back in to sort of, share the workload and that. How do you identify and then empower those people or those community members to actually, to run parts of what you're doing under your voice? And how do you sort of introduce that to the learners and then set them up for success?
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's, I'll just take note with one thing that you said. This is a brilliant way of thinking about how to expand your own capacity by leveraging other people, other champions. But we're not necessarily putting them under our voice. We're expanding our voice. And I think that's a really tricky question to be thinking about, all of us. I'm not looking for someone to come under my voice, but I want them to feel part of the ethos. I want them to feel part of the mission. I want them to believe in the possibilities that individuals can create and our ability to hold space to facilitate that with strategies and tools and techniques. Their voice is their own. And I think having voices that are unique and diverse in our organizations is essential for all of us. So I'm trying to hold space for what that looks like, where my energy, my focus, my vision can stay strong, but also give space for others to come in. Because we all know that we don't do well in other organizations sometimes because we don't want our voices to be, relegated to someone else's or put under someone else's. But I think, how do you hold that? Again, it goes back to how do you hold that space for other voices to emerge and have the chance to connect with the people maybe I don't as well.
Yeah, I love that take. And I was talking to Thomas about something similar to that, which is, how do you get a diversity of voice all headed towards the same North Star? Because it creates, I guess it expands, is a better word to use, your access to all different segments of the market, while pushing towards that, that major goal there. So that's brilliant.
I think mission alignment is everything, and branding is everything. Making sure that we're always coming back to why we're doing what we're doing, what the mission is, what the goals are, what's important. And if we can be sharing that as leaders, as entrepreneurs, and making sure that that's always present, I think the people who are compelled to show up with us, to listen to us, to follow us, to work with us, to take over from us, they're going to follow that ethos, follow that mission. And maybe they might take it in different directions. Who knows? But that's the essence of leadership, isn't it?
Yeah. Leaning into, I guess, leaning into those people's strengths, and instead of hindering them, allowing them to expand your voice in ways you didn't think was possible. That's quite profound. I like that. For that's the end of my sort of formal questions from the floor. Is there any questions you have for Jennifer?
Why education?
That's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest audience or market to work in.
Tell me about it.
Thank you. Are you in it too?
Yeah. Wow. It's a weird coincidence.
Oh, funny. What area of education are you in?
Oh, no. When I say education, I mean the direction Mercer Fox is going right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Why education? The reason in education is because if you're going to give a person in life an opportunity to make decisions that are aligned with their values and their goals and their aspirations, the only place you really have them as a captive audience is in education. And we make some of the biggest decisions of our lives when we're in our teens and our 20s without knowing it, without any guidance. And the only input that we have is from our family and our communities and any organizations we may be a part of, any exposure we may have been exposed to. And so many of us struggle for years and years and years trying to find a direction. And so I went out directly to audience. I went to organizations. I went to nonprofits. I went to business organizations. I spoke in all those places. I spoke at the United Nations with the leaders. But at the end of the day, we can't fix what's broken about our schools if we don't roll up our sleeves sometimes and go in there ourselves. And there are a lot of things broken with the education space right now. There are a lot of challenges, and they are being completely tested at every level right now. But there are a lot of dedicated people who really do care about those kids and about us back in the day. I know we're only where we are today because certain people invested in us and believed in us. I want to make sure that we can show up and provide that leadership to millions and millions of young people who desperately need it as they're trying to form their own sense of identity in the world. I think that's one of the most profound things that we can do if we can survive.
Yeah. What do you feel is the biggest tragedy in education right now for people who build courses and teach?
That's a great question. I think the biggest tragedy is how siloed everything is. That I think we've built up such standards and such infrastructure and so many policies around how things should be. And that's what they call the ivory towers, that I think that those are crumbling around us. And I think it's hard for education to get out of their own way. I think even the best resources and opportunities that might be right in front of them, they can't connect with sometimes because there are so many layers and layers and layers of stuff in the way. If any of us see something that's compelling, we can take out our credit card and pay for it and engage with it or show up in front of it. But I think education has to get out of its own way right now. And I don't think that means tearing down the systems. I don't think that means bringing fire to the buildings, burning down the infrastructure. I don't think that's the answer. But I think we have to really re-examine and come back to why people seek education. Why is it important to be educated? And look at how we can best deliver that in the most efficient, effective, impactful way. And that's going to mean reimagining a lot of the systems. So we're staying as flexible and modular as we possibly can with our programming so we can show up wherever there are safe spaces for students and learning.
And does it mean as well, I guess, something I've heard a lot about people trying to, I guess, disrupt education is a huge search for champions within the current education systems that are, believers that want to see it change. But, is that something that you guys look for? Is that something that you'd recommend?
You need champions. I mean, Crossing the Chasm is one of the greatest books for entrepreneurs scaling, businesses. And they talk about you have to find the first movers and the champions in the beginning and all the way through. So trying to align with people who are in the same mindset, who have the same dedication is so important. But it's just layers and layers and layers that you have to get through to get to young people when they're in an educational situation.
Yeah.
It's nice to know they're being protected and there's guardianship there, but sometimes there's far too much.
And are you confident? Do you have hope that things are changing? Have you seen that within the market?
I think, big things that are really inspiring to me are the refocus on work. Not to say we go to school to work or we go to school to learn about work, but the fact that they recognize that spending all that time in school without talking about what you do for work on the other side or what you might be able to do is not okay anymore. So all of the schools all over the world are now being incentivized, encouraged, even forced to start talking about workforce readiness. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we could possibly do, because workforce readiness is not just about getting jobs, it's about creating businesses. And I keep saying that over and over and over. Everyone says, oh, we need to get kids jobs, we need to get them jobs. I'm like, no, 65% of our kids want to be entrepreneurs. We need to get them opportunities, help them find opportunities. And so I'm seeing now huge organizations and huge funds that are going into, I mean, $22 billion alone in 2022 went into funding companies just like ours who are innovating in education. Unfortunately, about 2% of that went to women and entrepreneurs, which is what happens in venture capital. But there's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy. And there are organizations and corporations and governments that are coming together now to say that it's not okay for young people to stay in school up until 18 or 25 years old and not have these conversations and not have this training. And so as tired as I am, as hard as it's been, this is a moment in time where programs like ours that are proven, tested, that are verified, that are employer aligned, that have credentials, that are stackable and transferable, all the things we've been fighting and working to do and build are now facing a market that desperately needs resources like ours. And so it's really up to us to survive what we have to survive, to be present when they're making those decisions and the funding's in line, so we can be there and we can get the scale and get into the programs. And that's really what's happening. We're moving from individual school sales now to full schools. I mean, to like maybe the business school to the full school. That's
Right.
a sale from a few hundred students to a few thousand students. If
Yeah.
we go to the full university, it could be 20,000. If we go to India, it could be 100,000. That's where our business pivots and the trajectory changes. But we've got to stay in the game through all the tumultuousness and keep our heads about us as entrepreneurs while everything feels chaotic, to stay the course. And I feel like we will win in this effort. And everyone we work with will win if we can be successful now.
No, that's great. It fills me with a lot of confidence as well, because I remember when I was going to university, there's always this, you sort of go to university, there's this implied idea that you're going to get a job afterwards. Nobody talks about it. University doesn't talk about it, but there's this implied idea like, do my graduate course, get a job straight after. And, you know, I can only speak to the statistics within Australia, but I think the average was 4.7 years before you got a job in the field that you studied for after you left university. And so, yeah, so that does fill me with confidence that you see this sort of movement towards, hey, let's actually have the work conversation,
Yeah.
And see if what you're doing is in demand and how you can work around that.
Yes, and now there's data. There's more data. We know that in the United States, 75% of high school students are not prepared to make career decisions, and 50% of college students. How you can spend $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 on an education and have no one talk to you about what you're going to do with your life? There's a massive question about the ROI on education right now because we're not addressing this properly, but the tides are changing, the voices are being heard, and I think there's going to be a lot of change on this. That we start to see in our schools at all levels over the next few years.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're almost at time here, so I guess I'll leave the last question open to anybody else on the floor who has anything else to ask. Viola? No. Well, look, I think then that's perfect. Well, look, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us here today, and for creating and holding that space, as I'm sure you seem well practiced in. So thank you.
I have one thing to share. I found a photo I wanted to share with you, not a photo, an illustration. This is my immersive fox.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
Love it.
And you did it yourself?
No, I wish. I saw this in a gallery, and my boyfriend got it for me. I've been waiting to hang it, but get it framed properly. But when you said immersive fox, and I thought, how am I woke up at like 6 in the morning because it's Los Angeles time. So I was like, I put on color to wake up and wake myself up at least, if not anyone else. But then I thought when I saw the name again, immersive fox, I said, I'm gonna go get my fox and bring him with me.
Wow, that looked Yeah, that looks incredible.
You know, I'll tell you, if you have a minute, I'll tell you a really cool backstory. The reason I fell in love with this fox when I saw him in a gallery is because when I was a young girl, and my parents would fight a lot, and I used to hide in a closet where my mother had a red fox, and the fur coats were a big thing in New York, and in at certain times, in certain places, and she had this red fox coat that I thought was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and I loved it so much. And when I would be scared, I would hide in the closet and wrap myself in a closet with the red fox around me. And then when I saw it in the gallery years later as an adult, I just had this connection between the baby fox and myself hiding in the fur coat, thinking like, I now like see the animal behind the coat and the space and the child behind the emotion and as the adult. And so it was really beautiful. I felt a sense of kinship with the baby fox.
There's a lot of people in Immersive Fox that are actually very like connect with with fox as a spirit animal and whatnot, and we chose our logo by purpose because in fact we wanted to rename the company from Immersive Fox to Video AI because at the time that's what we did, Video AI.
Yeah.
And then the team voted almost 100% to stay Immersive Fox.
Wow.
Because we really like Fox and we really like foxes. So yeah, here we go. We're Immersive Fox.
I love it. Well, there's my best support I can offer. I too see the fox as a spirit animal, and I think that's just beautiful. And it's a beautiful name, and I think it encapsulates the essence and the energy that you're bringing to the world with your technology. And frankly, at the end of the day, it's the problems of the world happen when we rely too much on the technology and we forget that we're human beings and we're creatures. And our connection, our humanity is what will continue to help us thrive as a world and as businesses and as entrepreneurs. So I love that you keep the Immersive Fox at the core of your name and your branding.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually, thank you for saying this. That's actually the problem that we are like. Can I ask a question? Because I mean,
Sure.
that's sort of. I know that we're almost at the time, but I want to ask you a question. In some ways, it's indeed a difficult thing to combat because on one hand, we are building the technology that is like about AI, and replicating humans with it, and then creating the courses using AI and all of that. And on another hand, we are doing this to improve the education technology and revolutionize it. Do you have any suggestions on how to create a tech so that it still has heart in it? Does it make sense? Like so that it has this it in the product, and if and you already played around with our product, do you have some recommendations on this?
God, I mean, on the technology side, I would just say, make sure the technology is as responsive as it can be. Make sure that you don't lose the essence of connection, but also always stay true to the fact that technology is not the same as human beings. We use it as a tool, but I think we have to stay present as humans, as the leaders, as the people behind the technology too. I think we have to be careful not to rely on it so much that we lose our own sense of place and space.
So kind of like a collaboration between AI and human is needed. That's what you're saying.
I think so, and it's not just to make it. I think trying to like trick people into whether this is real or not. I think that's where we lose our faith. That's where we get scared. But I think understanding that we use AI technology to expand learning, expand opportunity, expand access, but we have to keep the human beings present at the same time as much as possible. So I would say, even if we start to go down a path and use AI tools with our learning, I want to make sure that there's live presence, that there are live people all around it all the time, and that we stay clear about the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I mean, I agree with you, and it's actually something that what we discovered is that the only way for us to make the platform works if it's not fully replaces humans. If it, you know what, like meaning that we are generating the content. It's true, we are generating the courses. We are generating everything, but then it's still human that does the final, like, you know, check. And that's what works. Because otherwise AI will be just like, you know, creating four fingers instead of five, or yeah.
Yeah. I don't
It's
have
gotta
all
work
the
as a
answers, but I
scaffolding.
think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Likewise. I mean, it's too bad. I just, yeah. But I saw your profile. It looks very impressive, and good job on your EYP Ventures.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, it's so lovely to meet all of you, and thank you for holding the space for me and for this beautiful conversation. And Thomas, were you going to say something?
No, I want to thank you, Jennifer, for waking up so early in the morning for something like this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's really lovely to be with you all.
Oli, will be posting this session, right, in the upcoming week, and like publishing and sending Jennifer the notes, right? And to everybody in school.
Oliver, you were wonderful. Thank you so much for
I
being the
think we
brilliant
lost Ollie.
host
He's
you are.
frozen.
Cool. Well, let's wrap it up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
See you
Thank you,
next week.
Jennifer.
See you next week.
See you all
Bye-bye.
next week.
Oh,